Elton John, a legendary name in the global music scene, a man who gifted us countless timeless hits and ignited millions of fans with explosive performances. Yet, few truly grasp the intricate personal life behind the dazzling stage lights, a tumultuous love story, secrets, and scandals potent enough to pique anyone's curiosity. His romantic journey was far from serene. Instead, it was a winding path riddled with tangled relationships, marriages bound by societal pressures, and secret affairs that rocked the world. Before he unveiled his true self, a proud, openly gay man, Elton found himself ensnared in a labyrinth of conflicting affections. His marriage to Renata Blau wasn't merely a love affair. It was a social charade, meticulously staged to conceal his true nature. The days spent within that marriage were a torment of internal strife, pain, and unspeakable secrets. No one but Elton himself knew that behind the vows and promises lay a soul yearning for freedom, a true love still held captive. Prior to that, a man had stormed into Elton's life like a tempest. John Reid, his brilliant manager and, crucially, his first lover. The complex intertwining of their professional and romantic lives kept Elton's career and mind in a constant maelstrom. They were allies and adversaries, weathering highs and lows together, yet their partnership was not without fierce arguments and bloody power struggles. The clandestine nature of their relationship, though carefully guarded, nevertheless sent shockwaves through the showbiz world of the time. And one cannot overlook the fleeting, yet notoriously loud affairs with female models and actresses, dalliances that kept the press ravenous, dissecting every gesture, every glance. They were the masks Elton donned to obscure his authentic self. Yet these very relationships only amplified the drama and media intrigue. Finally, Elton's emotional life turned a new page when he encountered Vitor Baptista, the man who helped him open up, embrace himself, and bravely live his truth. And then came his profound bond with David Furnish, his life partner for decades, who has stood by and supported him on his journey to overcome prejudice, becoming a living icon for the LGBT community worldwide. The names Elton John and John Reid are inextricably linked, etched into the formative years of a legend's life and career. To dissect the spectacular success of Elton John in the 1970s is to confront the undeniable, indispensable role of John Reid, a brilliant manager, yet also his first lover, confidant, ally, and at times, a sworn enemy within a relationship as intricate as it was emotionally fraught. The year was 1970. Elton John, then a struggling artist navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the British music scene, found his path illuminated by the arrival of John Reid. Reid, a manager of youthful ambition, sharp intellect, and keen foresight, quickly discerned the immense potential simmering beneath Elton's unassuming exterior. Their connection swiftly transcended the professional, drawing them into a magnetic pull rooted in a shared resonance of spirit. Their relationship, swift and intense, soon eclipsed the mere boundaries of business. According to numerous internal sources, John Reid became Elton John's first boyfriend, a pivotal same-sex relationship that cast a profound shadow over both Elton's blossoming career and his intensely private life. In those nascent years with John, Elton seemingly discovered a bedrock of stability, a kindred spirit who understood and accepted him in a world rife with prejudice and suffocating societal pressures. However, the narrative was far from a simple idyll of sweet days and harmonious melodies. The liaison between Elton and John, it is widely reported, endured a litany of harrowing trials and explosive dramas, particularly as power and career ascendancy increasingly became the gravitational centers of their world. John Reid was renowned for his controlling and somewhat autocratic disposition in managing Elton's career. He was more than a manager, he was the puppeteer behind every significant decision. From song selection and marketing strategy to even Elton's personal relationships. This pervasive intervention, investigators note, began to suffocate Elton, eroding his creative freedom and, most critically, his autonomy in matters of the heart. The most explosive drama within this intricate dynamic revolved around fierce arguments, fueled not merely by professional disagreements but by the insidious specters of jealousy and suspicion. There were documented instances where John Reid's suspicions regarding Elton's extramarital relationships led to volatile confrontations, inflicting deep emotional scars on both parties. One particularly notorious incident, whispered among the inner circles, involved a late-night party at the zenith of Elton's career. Reid allegedly discovered Elton's undisclosed relationships with other men. This revelation didn't merely fracture their bond, it forged chasms that proved profoundly difficult to bridge. Yet, despite these seismic rifts, they remained inextricably linked, bound by an underlying, powerful emotional tether. Beyond the personal conflicts, the relationship between Elton John and John Reid was shrouded in a dense fog of rumors concerning finances and the ruthless pursuit of asset control. Among the most frequently cited dramas was the pervasive allegation that John Reid manipulated Elton's financial interests. According to internal sources and certain undisclosed documents, John Reid exerted significant control over a substantial portion of Elton's contracts and music rights, effectively curtailing Elton's freedom to manage his own assets. There were even periods, it is said, when Elton faced the ominous prospect of losing ownership of critical works, a development that pushed their already strained relationship to its absolute breaking point. This financial scandal not only poisoned their personal connection but also inflicted severe psychological trauma on Elton, a man inherently sensitive to pressure. During these trying periods, he wrestled with the agonizing dichotomy of love and betrayal, a career soaring against a private life in chaotic disarray. Despite the relentless internal strife, the symbiotic pairing of Elton John and John Reid undeniably yielded spectacular triumphs. John Reid was not merely Elton's guide through the treacherous currents of the music industry, he was, ironically, a catalyst, an unexpected muse who compelled Elton to transcend his self-imposed limitations. However, this profound reliance on John came at a steep psychological cost for Elton. He endured periods of severe psychological crisis, feeling adrift and powerless under John's unwavering control. Some analysts and close associates suggest that this period marked the genesis of Elton's struggle to reclaim his identity, to confront the formidable barriers of sexual identity and societal expectation. In numerous later interviews, Elton John himself conceded that his relationship with John Reid was a complex maze, at once a passionate love affair and a recurring nightmare, a high-stakes game of power, cunning, and profound emotional conflict. Ultimately, this near-decade-long entanglement reached its inevitable conclusion, though not without further acrimony. The rupture between Elton and John marked the end of a turbulent chapter, but it also signaled the dawn of a new journey, one defined by arduous challenges and profound self-discovery. In the aftermath, John Reid continued to cast a long shadow of influence within the entertainment industry. Elton John, however, began to speak more openly about his sexuality, charting a new course for his life on his own terms. Yet, the spectral memories of John Reid, with all their inherent drama, their explosive confrontations, and the unsettling intertwining of love and animosity, remain an indelible, inseparable part of the narrative of Elton John's life and his enduring legacy. Understood. Here's the translation of Part 2 with a detective tone, maintaining fidelity to the original text. As discussed, it will be approximately the same length as the Vietnamese source, not 2,000 words. The year is 1984. Elton John's career, a supernova in its prime, was momentarily overshadowed by a seismic event that rattled the media, his marriage to Renata Blau. It swiftly became the epicenter of public fascination, a fervent topic of whispers and headlines. Yet, behind the radiant photographs splashed across newspapers, beneath the veneer of polite congratulations, lay a narrative riddled with profound conflict, agonizing internal struggle, and suffocating secrets. the lives of both individuals, it seems, were ensnared in a theatrical production, roles thrust upon them without true consent. In the early 1980s, the music world, and indeed society at large, was hardly prepared to openly embrace a gay icon like Elton John. At that juncture, queer artists were often deemed a risk in the public eye. Most felt compelled to remain closeted or adopt facades to preserve their careers. Elton John, despite his undeniable talent and explosive charisma, was not immune to these unspoken, yet brutally enforced, rules. The burden of concealing his sexual orientation, of cultivating a normal public image, became a colossal weight on his shoulders. It was against this backdrop that the marriage to Renata Blauel, a talented, yet reclusive, sound engineer, emerged. It was seen by industry insiders, and even by Elton himself, as a lifeline for his career and public persona. This was no mere love story, it was a calculated arrangement, a social play meticulously orchestrated to shield the secrets he dared not reveal. Publicly, Elton and Renata presented the image of a perfect couple. Their lavish wedding in a Sydney, Australia church captivated global media attention. Many genuinely believed it was a fairy tale romance between two people deeply in love. But in stark reality, Elton later confessed, he perpetually felt as though he was forced to play a role within that marriage. In subsequent interviews, Elton described the stark truth. He needed a shield to withstand public scrutiny and to continue his artistic endeavors unimpeded by scandal or whispers about his sexuality. Renata Blauel, though not a celebrity, was far from a simple figure in her role as Elton John's wife. She possessed a strong personality and a deep understanding of music, having contributed technically to several of Elton's albums. Yet amidst this professional support, Renata was also a private individual, maintaining a guarded distance from the relentless pressure of public opinion. Beneath the veneer of fabricated happiness, the days were consumed by intense internal struggle for both. Elton wrestled daily with the truth of his sexual identity, a truth society at the time deemed abnormal and largely unacceptable. There were countless moments when he plunged into profound loneliness, feeling imprisoned within a relationship where he could not confide in his spouse. Close friends and associates confided that Elton experienced periods of intense stress, escalating into domestic arguments and pervasive tension. The burden of secrets and self-torment reportedly drove him deeper into alcohol and substance addiction, seeking solace in them as a means to escape the suffocating psychological pressure. As for Renata Blauel, she too endured considerable pain as the truth gradually unfurled, forcing her to exist within a relationship she could not fully comprehend. Multiple sources indicate she endured silent nights of tears and felt a profound sense of betrayal, having been unaware of Elton's homosexuality beforehand. For 4 years, the marriage, though a public spectacle, could not conceal its widening fissures. Rumors circulated of the couple living separately within their home, even sleeping in different rooms. On several occasions, Elton was reportedly seen with other men, fueling the media's growing suspicions. Then, in 1988, precisely as the media and public began to grasp the true nature of affairs, Elton officially came out as gay in a shocking interview with the BBC. This was the turning point, marking the definitive end of the marriage and the dawn of a new, more authentic life. The divorce between Elton and Renata was widely regarded as a liberation for both, yet it sent tremors through the entertainment industry. Many speculated it had been a carefully orchestrated charade from the outset to mask the truth. More importantly, however, through this act, Elton stepped out of the shadows, bravely confronting himself and society. It was 1993. The glittering facade of the music world often obscured the internal wreckage of its brightest stars. Elton John, then navigating the treacherous, often lonely, waters of middle age, carried a heart scarred by countless failed romances and the persistent, insidious specter of addiction. His past was a series of chaotic files, each labeled with regret and unresolved conflict. Then, an unexpected anomaly appeared on the scene. David Furnish, a young Canadian filmmaker, seemingly untouched by the predatory glamour that usually surrounded Elton. Their paths converged at a casual party, hosted by mutual friends at Elton's sprawling Windsor residence. This wasn't a cinematic, destiny-driven encounter. There were no dramatic fireworks, no blinding spotlight illuminating their connection. Yet, in Elton's gaze, a gaze that had witnessed decades of adoration and superficiality, he saw something profoundly different. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he saw a man unconcerned with his formidable fame, unbewitched by his vast wealth, a man not contorting himself into some idealized, subservient form to please the rock star. He was, quite simply, David. An intriguing, unvarnished piece of evidence in a life overflowing with artifice. David, at that precise juncture, was a man of profound, almost palpable, contradictions. He hailed from a deeply conservative family, a background that had forced him to grapple fiercely with the daunting process of accepting his own homosexuality. He had lived, for much of his life, perpetually caught between two distinct worlds, the one he was painstakingly expected to inhabit, filled with conventional expectations, and the authentic, complex self he truly was. Elton, armed with the sharp, almost visceral intuition of someone who had himself plumbed the very depths of rebellion and self-destruction, immediately recognized that David was not a man easily subdued, nor one who would bend to the will of a demanding celebrity. And it was precisely this innate self-possession, this quiet, unwavering strength, that drew Elton in, creating a magnetic pull that felt entirely different from any he had experienced before. It was a subtle, yet undeniably powerful, clue to a potential stability he had long craved. A stability that had always eluded him in the dizzying vortex of his career. The detective reviewing Elton's case file would log this meeting as a critical turning point. A departure from previous patterns of tumultuous, ill-fated attachments. Mere weeks after that fateful encounter, their relationship formally transitioned from acquaintance to dating. Yet, this burgeoning bond immediately confronted its own submerged currents. Surprisingly, these initial challenges didn't emanate from the relentless, prying eyes of the press or the omnipresent paparazzi. No, the first tests of trust, the initial fissures, emerged from Elton himself. He entered this new, fragile connection with a heart already a complex mosaic of deep, unhealed fractures. Despite having successfully navigated the arduous and public journey of addiction recovery, he remained haunted by the pervasive, chilling specter of abandonment, by the insidious fear of betrayal. That deep-seated fear, a raw, exposed nerve meticulously concealed by his dazzling onstage smiles and the impenetrable, glittering veneer of superstardom, frequently erupted backstage, manifesting in explosive, emotionally charged arguments with David. These weren't petty squabbles, they were battles waged in the shadows, born of deep-seated insecurities. David, characterized by his disciplined, rational demeanor and an uncommon emotional fortitude, genuinely considered withdrawing from the relationship on multiple occasions. He later recounted in a candid interview that Elton, in his moments of vulnerability and controlled like a Victorian emperor and, at times, used generosity as a form of punishment, wielding his immense wealth and influence as a weapon in their private battles. This was Elton at his most fragile, his most emotionally raw, a man still, despite his global fame and apparent confidence, learning how to love without possessing, a celebrity struggling desperately to disentangle genuine affection from the ingrained habits of ownership. The detective analyzing this dynamic would meticulously note the persistent power imbalance, the lingering, toxic echoes of past relationships where control was not just a currency, but a defining characteristic. Furnish's remarkable patience, his almost superhuman resilience, became a crucial, perhaps the most crucial, piece of the complex psychological puzzle that was Elton John. He was not a submissive partner, he was a steadfast anchor in a turbulent sea. But the defining, pivotal difference this time was that Elton didn't flee. He didn't revert to old, destructive patterns. He listened. Truly listened, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, to another's pain and perspective. He learned, painstakingly, to apologize, a concept utterly alien to the petulant, entitled Elton of the 1980s. The record shows a dramatic shift. He no longer sought fleeting solace in the numbing oblivion of alcohol or cocaine after every bitter quarrel. Instead, he committed to consistent, rigorous psychological therapy, confronting the demons that had plagued him for decades. The destructive outbursts, the shouting, the theatrical smashing of expensive objects gave way to a quiet, almost reverent retreat into the recording studio. There, he poured his raw, unvarnished emotions into new songs. Intimate anthems of introspection like Original Sin or the poignant Something About the Way You Look Tonight. These tracks, upon forensic lyrical analysis, reveal a man undergoing a profound, almost spiritual, internal transformation, a tangible shift from reckless abandon and external theatrics to a deep, transformative introspective growth. The public saw the star. David saw the man desperately seeking redemption. The year 2005 marked a significant turning point, both legally and personally. The United Kingdom formally enacted legislation permitting civil partnerships for same-sex couples, a monumental step forward for LGBTQ+ rights. Elton and David, ever the pioneers, were among the very first to register their union, eager to formalize a bond that had already proven its strength. Their ceremony, held at Windsor Guildhall, a venue steeped in centuries of royal history, notably where Prince Charles and Camilla had exchanged vows, swiftly transcended a private celebration, becoming a deeply historic public event. The press, sensing a major cultural inflection point, descended upon Windsor with a ferocity typically reserved for royal weddings. Public opinion, predictably, polarized sharply. One vocal faction celebrated the event as a powerful symbol of progress, a jubilant victory for the LGBTQ+ community, a beacon of hope for countless individuals seeking legal recognition and acceptance. The other, the conservative, extremist element, condemned their union as an affront to traditional values, lamenting that an Elton John who once represented British values was now going against tradition. The accusations, fueled by deep-seated prejudice and moral outrage, were relentless, portraying their union as a scandalous defiance of established norms. The backlash was fierce, a testament to the societal battles still being waged. In response, Elton offered no verbal retort, no grand public address to silence his critics. He simply smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that spoke volumes, and then released the iconic photograph of him kissing David tenderly in front of the town hall, a powerful, defiant image that has since been proudly and prominently displayed in their living room. A constant reminder of that monumental day. But behind that public display of joy was an Elton brimming with tears, as he later penned in his candid memoir, Me. I never thought anyone could truly love me anymore. And then, I married him. The world had never seemed so beautiful. This quiet defiance, this poignant, powerful counter-narrative to the public outrage and moral condemnation, was a testament to the profound personal significance of their union. It was, in essence, Elton's final, most eloquent, public declaration of self-acceptance and enduring love. The narrative of their life together took an even more profound turn in 2010 when Elton and David welcomed their first son, Zachary, into their lives via surrogacy. 3 years later, in 2013, Elijah arrived, completing their family. And Elton, once notorious for his wild, all-night partying lifestyle, A figure synonymous with excess and unchecked hedonism underwent a remarkable, almost unbelievable metamorphosis, transforming into a disciplined, fiercely devoted father. The sheer scale of this change was remarkable, challenging every preconceived notion held by those who knew his past. The records show a clear shift in priorities. He once canceled a crucial tour engagement to ensure he was there to take his son to his very first day of school, a seemingly small act that spoke volumes about his new commitments. On another occasion, the famously flamboyant performer wept openly at the mere thought of being away from his children for more than 2 weeks during an Asian tour, a stark contrast to his past, when he had routinely been absent for months at a time for Las Vegas residencies without a second thought. Suddenly, songs like Circle of Life and Your Song became imbued with an entirely new, deeply personal meaning, no longer merely poetic lyrics, but the fervent, heartfelt prayers of a father who had once been utterly lost but had now, miraculously, found his true way home. This dramatic shift in priorities, from relentless self-indulgence to selfless dedication, speaks volumes about the depth and sincerity of his commitment to his new family. It was, arguably, his greatest performance yet, the role of a loving father. David, conversely, a filmmaker passionate about his own burgeoning career, willingly and selflessly receded into the background, choosing to prioritize their growing family. He became the steadfast anchor, not for a demanding superstar, but for a loving husband and 2 young, dependent children. Both Elton and David, in a profound and mutual act of self-sacrifice, willingly relinquished a part of their individual selves, their independent ambitions, to preserve and fortify their shared bond. The compromises, a keen detective would observe, were strategic, deliberate choices, meticulously designed to fortify their foundation against the inherent pressures of their unique life. Their joint commitment to their family unit became the strongest piece of evidence in their enduring love story. Yet, no marriage, regardless of its public perception or the individuals involved, is without its imperfections, even for Elton John, a man whose life seemed to invite drama. Years after their civil partnership, news outlets, ever vigilant for cracks in the celebrity facade, began circulating persistent rumors that David felt emotionally abandoned by Elton, that he was tired of living in the shadow of a superstar. A sentiment not uncommon for partners of colossal figures. Articles even brazenly alleged that Elton had developed romantic feelings for his personal assistant or a young composer with whom he was collaborating. The relentless media machine, perennially hungry for discord and sensationalism, sought tirelessly to dismantle their carefully constructed piece. Instead of retreating into his usual pattern of silence or defensiveness, David took a remarkably proactive stance. He responded directly and publicly in a powerful article published in The Independent, bravely confronting the speculation head-on. "We're not a fairy tale couple. We have our ups and downs, like anyone else. But I've never stopped loving Elton. And I know, in his deepest heart, he feels the same." This public declaration, a bold and unambiguous move in the face of intense public speculation, solidified their bond and presented a united front, signaling to the world that their love was resilient, not easily broken. Subsequently, they embarked on a courageous journey of marital therapy, a testament to their commitment to each other and their family. Elton significantly reduced his grueling touring schedule, making a conscious decision to dedicate more quality time to his family, prioritizing presence over performance. The ensuing years have served as a living testament to the profound truth that love is not merely a static state, it is, fundamentally, an active verb. They chose each other, consciously, every single day, defying their differences, the omnipresent external scandals, and even the predictable, sometimes mundane, challenges of daily life. Their unwavering perseverance, a clear-eyed analyst would conclude, was a deliberate, conscious effort, a continuous act of mutual devotion that strengthened their bond against all odds. Today, The partnership of Elton John and David Furnish stands not only as an emblem of enduring same-sex love but also as a powerful, resonant voice advocating for authentic living, fearlessly, unapologetically, and without pretense. Elton's life was once a turbulent testament to rebellion, a chaotic symphony of defiance. But it was David and their family who transformed him into a profound symbol of reconciliation, a bridge between overwhelming fame and cherished privacy. Between his tumultuous past and his serene present, their story, a complex tapestry of struggle and triumph, offers a compelling blueprint for navigating personal demons and formidable societal pressures, a deeply personal journey of self-acceptance and enduring love that resonates globally. In his deeply moving acceptance speech at the 2020 Academy Awards, upon winning for his poignant song "I'm Gonna Love Me Again," Elton declared, "I wrote this song for myself and for David, because he loved me even when I couldn't love myself." This served as a beautiful, resonant, and profoundly honest conclusion to a long, arduous journey. A testament to the healing power of unconditional love. The artist who once metaphorically set himself ablaze in the blinding spotlight finally learned to extinguish the flames, shed the costumes, and return home to the one who patiently waited for him, truly and sincerely, offering a love that transcended the superficiality of fame. Indeed, Elton John has lived a life saturated with an almost operatic level of drama, yet it is precisely these dramatic turns, these intense personal conflicts and triumphs, that have forged him into an iconic figure. He is an imperfect man, undeniably flawed, yet possessing an extraordinary, undeniable courage. He has a heart that was repeatedly broken, yet one that learned, against all odds, to love again. He is a phenomenal artist, but above all, he is a human being who dared to live and love authentically, on his own terms, in a world often unwilling to accept him. In an era where collective faith and enduring love feels increasingly eroded by endless news of celebrity divorces, the casual transience of app-based dating, and the prevalence of quick discard relationships, Elton John and David Furnish represent something truly rare and precious, a living testament to an imperfect, yet remarkably resilient, love. No one can definitively claim they will never part ways, for life is unpredictable. But it is precisely their lack of grand, public promises, their eschewal of self-righteous preaching, their refusal to overtly perform their relationship, choosing instead to simply and quietly live alongside each other, that makes their bond so profoundly credible, so deeply trustworthy. Elton's sprawling legacy is not merely his revolutionary music, his unparalleled collection of eccentric eyewear, or his legendary, record-breaking tours. His enduring legacy is the profound human journey of a man who once lived as though he would certainly die young, yet who managed, against all odds, to love deeply and live into old age. Alongside a person who possessed the rare wisdom to look past every crack, every scar, every flaw, to see the persistent, guiding light within. If Elton John were to be summarized in a single, poignant image, perhaps it would be that of a grand piano, chipped, slightly scarred. A few keys perhaps singed from being consumed by the sheer intensity of raw emotion, yet still capable of playing the most beautiful, soul-stirring melodies. His romantic life is not a blueprint to be replicated, nor is it a subject for judgment or condemnation. It is an open book, a compelling chapter in the human condition, where every wound endured transforms into a resonant lyric, every fleeting affair leaves an indelible echo, and every heartbreak, however devastating, is ultimately a crucial step forward on the long, arduous path toward finding true, enduring love. And now, as the stage lights have dimmed, the thunderous applause has finally faded, Elton no longer needs to embody the Rocket Man, perpetually soaring and searching. He has landed precisely where he was meant to be. His journey continues, but the destination of his heart has been reached. Not every legend is written under stage lights. There are chapters in Elton John's life where that very spotlight only deepened the shadows. The most dazzling years of his career were also the beginning of his darkest nights, where the music never stopped, but the soul fractured more than once. Behind the flamboyant sunglasses and the glittering robes stood a man lost in a labyrinth of pleasure, drugs, booze, and endless orgies with no final curtain. If there was ever a time when Elton John truly lost himself, it was the late 1970s bleeding into the early 1990s. He didn't just play music like there was no tomorrow, he lived like tomorrow had ceased to exist. A life of reckless abandon, luxury, and danger, to the point that Elton himself would later admit he should have been dead long ago. Accounts from former bodyguards, ex-managers, fleeting lovers, and even the dealers who supplied Elton's goods all paint the same picture. The mansion in Windsor was less a home than a luxury casino fused with a high-end nightclub, where cocaine piled like salt, liquor flowed like waterfalls. And every closed door held a secret no one dared to speak of twice. He didn't sleep. We had to put him to sleep with pills and wake him up with something else. One former assistant said in an anonymous interview. Elton went whole months without seeing daylight. Some called him a mad genius. Others said he was just another casualty of fame arriving too young. But for a man born with a congenital loneliness like Elton's, drugs weren't just a way to party. They were a mechanism for survival. A synthetic blanket over a void nothing could ever fill. By the early 1980s, Elton John was no longer a recreational user, he was utterly dependent. Cocaine became his soulmate, his mistress, and at times, an angel-faced executioner. Elton later admitted to snorting lines before performances, in dressing rooms, inside recording studios, even mid-interview with journalists. At a party in Los Angeles in 1982, Elton was seen in a smoke-filled room drowned in disco, his eyes bloodshot, laughing as he personally handed out cocaine to every guest. A fellow musician at the scene nearly shook his head. Elton wasn't a person anymore. He was a storm. And a storm it was. Multi-day benders with no sleep, where Elton drowned in bodies and bottles, in music and screams. He once rented out the top floor of the Beverly Hills Hotel for a 5-day party with a menu of LSD, ecstasy, hard liquor, and an army of young men flown in from every corner of America. Desperate and spiraling, his behavior grew erratic. He'd yell at staff because the orange juice wasn't cold enough. Break down crying at dinner because he missed his mother, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. One night, Elton walked the streets in a fur coat and sunglasses, screaming that he was the Queen of England. Then the price began to show. In 1986, Elton was diagnosed with a serious throat condition and had to cancel multiple shows. But that was only the surface. Beneath, his nervous system was rotting from the inside out due to overwhelming narcotics intake. He began suffering panic attacks, blackouts, and once nearly died of an overdose at the Claridge's Hotel in London. An insider from his management team confessed, "There were nights we didn't know if he was still alive. We had to press an ear to his chest to hear a heartbeat." Then disaster struck in early 1987, a young lover died of an overdose right inside Elton's mansion. The police came. The press exploded. Though he wasn't charged, Elton plunged into a deep crisis. That death was a wake-up call, but also a scar he would never heal from. That lover, whose name has been kept secret, was a young actor with a bright future. They met during an art fundraiser in Soho. The affair lasted only a few months, but the intensity left craters fiery and toxic. Rumors swirled that the boy had been pushed to use drugs to keep up with Elton during his marathon parties. No one knows the full truth, but Elton would later admit, "I didn't kill anyone. But I created the environment where it happened." By the end of the 1980s, Elton was like a ghost drifting through a glamorous world. Bloodshot eyes behind Versace lenses, pale from sleeplessness. He haunted nightclubs from New York to Ibiza, no purpose, no direction. Fleeting affairs, near-death overdoses, violent outbursts all painted a portrait closer to horror than glory. He once screamed at a friend, "I'm Elton fucking John. No one says no to me." Then collapsed, tears streaming onto his purple Gucci shoes. There was no shortage of leeches pretending to love him, only to vanish when the money dried up. Secret photos, leaked tapes, even threats from former lovers, his life was a never-ending gothic tragedy. So what saved Elton John? Not a sold-out concert. Not a Grammy, not a platinum record. But a visit to a friend undergoing rehab. Elton saw himself in that friend's hollow eyes and trembling hands. And he decided it was time to stop. In 1990, Elton checked into a rehab center in Chicago. The world was stunned. A megastar of his stature, openly admitting to addiction and asking for help, unprecedented. He stayed for months. No lights. No stage. Just raw truth, and the real Elton, perhaps for the first time in decades. There, he wrote the first entries of a journal about loneliness, emptiness, and the longing to start over. He learned to be quiet. He learned to apologize. And he relearned how to love himself. The months that followed weren't easy. But Elton never looked back. He launched a charitable campaign against AIDS, supported the LGBTQ+ community, and wrote music deeper and more personal than ever before. Fans saw a new Elton, wiser, calmer, but still burning with passion. A survivor. Yet in his eyes, there remained a profound sorrow. As if the past still rode in the back seat, watching silently. The parties, the lost souls. The unfixable mistakes, they are all chapters in Elton John's story, and they will never fully leave him. If a detective kept a notebook tracking this journey, perhaps there would be only one fitting closing line. Elton John escaped the abyss, but the abyss never let go of his heart. Elton John, born Reginald Kenneth Dwight, never lived quietly. He wasn't designed for stillness, nor wired for peace. From the moment his fingers first touched ivory keys, his life became a tempest set to music. Yet, despite the stadiums, the scandals, and the sequin suits, it was never just about fame. It was about searching, sometimes recklessly, often tragically, for love, for meaning, for a reason to stay alive. His story reads like a gothic opera, a symphony of glitter and grief, betrayal and forgiveness, ecstasy and addiction. And if there's anything that time and hindsight afford us, it is not just the ability to admire his artistry, but to learn from the man behind the myth. In his earliest years, Elton chased fame with the hunger of a starving animal. And when he caught it, it didn't satisfy him, it consumed him. The applause was deafening, the standing ovations a narcotic. But behind closed doors, he was still the boy from Pinner, bruised by his father's coldness and his mother's volatility. No number of platinum records could fill that inner void. He once confessed to snorting cocaine while playing the piano mid-performance. He lived in castles, slept in silk sheets, and drowned in designer clothes, yet he admitted, often and openly, that he hated himself. He was lonely, isolated, lost. His life teaches us a brutal truth: external success means nothing when you're at war with yourself. In the 1970s and 80s, Elton was a spectacle. Every show, every appearance was another layer of performance: the peacock feathers, the rhinestone sunglasses, the platform boots. He wore his flamboyance like armor. But under that dazzling veneer was a man suffocating under the weight of his own secrets. His marriage to Renata Blauel was less a romance than a desperate act of camouflage. He wasn't trying to deceive her as much as he was trying to deceive himself. The cost? Emotional devastation on both sides. her pain, his shame. The public fallout, all of it stemmed from a society that made authenticity a liability. It wasn't until Elton embraced his identity and declared to the world that he was gay that his life began to shift. The lesson is simple, yet agonizingly difficult to practice. You can't love others if you're still hiding from yourself. Elton's romantic history is littered with damage, some inflicted upon him, much of it self-inflicted. John Reed, his first lover and manager, became both protector and predator. Theirs was a union of fire and control, of passion and paranoia. They built an empire together, only to tear each other apart in courtrooms and tabloids. Then there was Linda Woodrow, the woman he left days before their wedding. And the chorus line of Adonises he tried to rescue or ruin through brief, intense affairs. Elton loved recklessly, sometimes cruelly. He admitted to being needy, manipulative, demanding. At one point, he even attempted suicide in front of guests, an act more theatrical cry than real exit. But David Furnish changed the script. With David, Elton found not a mirror of his chaos, but a balance to it. Their love wasn't perfect. It was tested by fame, by parenthood, by age. But it endured. The greatest lesson here is that real love isn't fireworks. It's quiet resilience. It's showing up again and again, even when the cameras are off and the makeup's washed away. Elton John should have died in the 80s. By all statistical odds, he shouldn't have made it past 40. Cocaine, alcohol, bulimia, sex addiction, he didn't just flirt with death, he invited it in for tea. But Elton chose life. In 1990, after a near-fatal overdose and the loss of countless friends to AIDS, he checked himself into rehab. And there, for the first time, he stopped performing. He stripped away the wigs, the ego, the persona. He cried. He wrote. He listened. From that moment, Elton began his second act, one not defined by self-destruction, but by service. He founded the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which has since raised over $600 million for HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment. His philanthropy wasn't just generous, it was penitential. Atonement through action. Elton teaches us that it's never too late to start over. That redemption isn't handed to you, you claw your way toward it, one painful, honest step at a time. For years, Elton tried to bury the trauma of his childhood. His father, a man of few words and fewer affections, left an ache that fame couldn't soothe. His mother, alternately supportive and savage, instilled in him both talent and terror. In his autobiography, Elton wrote about facing these ghosts head-on, forgiving them not to excuse their failings, but to unshackle himself from their grip. He stopped running. He started remembering. And in doing so, he began to heal. His story reminds us that the past doesn't disappear when ignored. It festers. Only by confronting it can we reclaim control. Elton's greatest triumphs weren't his sold-out tours or his Oscar-winning songs. They were the moments he allowed the world to see him as he was, broken, scared, but still standing. When he opened up about his addictions, when he spoke about his HIV-positive friends, when he cried on stage or hugged a stranger, he transformed vulnerability into strength. He became a mirror for millions who felt unseen, unloved, or unworthy. In a culture obsessed with perfection, Elton's rawness was radical. It told us, you don't have to be okay to be valuable. You just have to be real. Listen to Tiny Dancer, to Candle in the Wind, to Sacrifice. These aren't just hits, they're exorcisms. They're diary entries set to music, moments of unbearable emotion translated into something universal. Elton's songs are bloodstained pages of a life lived loudly. And each one, even the upbeat anthems, carries the fingerprint of survival. He once said, "When I was most lost, the music was the only thing that didn't lie to me." His catalog is proof that art doesn't just entertain, it saves. And for anyone struggling, his life is a testament. Even at your lowest, you can create beauty. Elton once said he never thought he'd be a father. Given his past, few would have blamed him for avoiding the role. But today, with David Furnish, he raises 2 sons. He takes them to soccer practice. He cooks them breakfast. He sings them lullabies. This quiet domesticity, far from the stadium lights, might be his most radical act. In choosing to become a present, loving parent, Elton broke the cycle of emotional neglect he inherited. He teaches us that family isn't about biology. It's about intention. It's about showing up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. In 2023, Elton concluded his Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour. It was the end of an era. But unlike so many rock stars who cling to relevance, Elton exited with grace. He didn't need another encore. He had already said what he needed to say in song, in action, in love. And now, he lives. Quietly. Fully. Authentically. His greatest achievement isn't the Grammys or the knighthood, it's the peace he found after decades of war with himself. His legacy is not the spectacle. It's the struggle. And the lesson is this: greatness isn't about being perfect. It's about becoming whole. If Elton John were to be distilled into a single image, perhaps it would be a grand piano, a little battered, keys chipped from wear. Lacquer dulled from decades of spotlight and smoke. But still, it plays. And when it does, it reminds the world that even instruments with scars can produce masterpieces. He was once a rocket man, soaring toward destruction. But now, he has landed. Not in obscurity. Not in shame. But in the one place he never expected to find, peace. And that, above all else, is his final gift to us. A life lived fully, messily, loudly. And a quiet reminder that no matter how broken we are, love, real love, can still find us. If only we dare to open the door.